So if you look at someone who just operates with this remarkable everyday consistency, like a really prolific writer or a highly effective executive, or honestly just that one friend you have who never seems completely overwhelmed by their schedule.
Right, we all have that one friend.
Exactly. It is incredibly tempting to just attribute their success to, like, superhuman willpower. We assume they just have this stronger internal drive than the rest of us.
Yeah, but if you actually look closer, the data rarely points to willpower. I mean,
Mm.
willpower is a finite resource.
Right.
Relying on it constantly is just a fast track to burnout. What highly consistent people actually have is this invisible scaffolding holding their days together.
A sequence of behaviors and even linguistic frames that are just so deeply ingrained they barely even have to think about them.
Exactly. It's the transition from conscious effort to automated architecture. We usually just casually call this a routine, but honestly, that word kind of underplays the really complex biological and psychological mechanics that are at work beneath the surface.
And mapping out that invisible architecture is exactly our mission today.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the Deep Dive. We have this highly illuminating stack of source material to explore with you.
It's a really fun one today.
It is. We are analyzing a transcript from an English learning program, actually. And the setup is pretty clever. It features this conversation between speakers detailing the really granular habits of their daily lives. And then it's supplemented by a vocabulary expert who drops in to dissect the specific language they use to frame those habits.
Which provides this phenomenal dual lens. I mean, we aren't just observing the physical timeline of a day, we're actually decoding the linguistic choices they use to navigate it.
Right.
The language reveals the underlying psychology. It really forces us to ask how the words we use to describe our actions actually shape our cognitive state.
Which is fascinating. Like, why do we crave these predictable rhythms, and how does this daily architecture dictate our energy levels?
Well, the source maps this out through a continuous loop, right? Starting with the very initial moments of waking up.
Right, the morning launch pad. And we see two distinct morning strategies in the transcript. One speaker describes waking at 7 a.m., and engaging in these gentle stretching and breathing exercises while they're actually still in bed.
It's a very slow, gradual acclimation to consciousness.
Yeah. But then the contrast is provided by the other speaker who wakes up at 6:30 a.m. for work, and their approach is entirely immediate and, well, biological.
Yeah, the very first action they take the second they wake up is drinking a large glass of water.
Which is such a specific detail.
It is. Two completely different entry points. But the source emphasizes that both are highly intentional strategies. They're designed to assert early control over the nervous system.
I really want to look closely at the mechanics of that 6:30 a.m. glass of water, actually, because it is so much more than just a preference for, like, being thirsty.
Oh, absolutely.
When you sleep for 7 or 8 hours, you are essentially fasting, right, and dehydrating. I mean, I used to think of a morning routine like starting a car in winter.
Oh, like letting the engine warm up?
Exactly. But I realized a much better analogy is a dry sponge left on a kitchen counter overnight.
Oh, that's a great visual.
By morning, that sponge is totally rigid. You can't fold it, it's practically brittle. And if you try to force it to clean a dish, it just sort of scrapes the surface and doesn't do anything.
Right, it's completely ineffective.
But the second you run it under the faucet, it just absorbs the water, expands, and instantly regains its elasticity.
That captures the biological reality perfectly, actually, because over the course of a night, our bodies lose a really significant amount of water just through respiration and perspiration.
Just from breathing.
Just from breathing. And brain tissue itself can actually lose volume when dehydrated.
Wait, really? It shrinks?
Yeah, it temporarily loses volume, which directly impairs cognitive function and mood.
Wow. So that immediate glass of water isn't merely quenching thirst, it's like biological triage.
Exactly.
You're basically reinflating the cognitive sponge before asking the brain to perform any complex tasks for the day.
And the vocabulary expert in the transcript highlights this perfectly by focusing on the word hydrate.
Right.
The distinction between drinking water and hydrating is super vital here. I mean, drinking water is just a passive description of an action.
But hydrate is an active, functional strategy.
Yes. It signals intent. It frames the action not as just some casual choice, but as this necessary biological protocol.
So following that initial protocol, the speakers then move into foundational hygiene, washing faces, brushing teeth, and then they both prioritize what they call a light breakfast. The source notes that one speaker prefers oatmeal and toast, while the other opts for eggs or like a smoothie. But if you look at the subtext of the conversation, the real power of this habit doesn't seem to stem from the specific macronutrients of the food itself.
No, the nutritional value is almost secondary to the psychological automation occurring here.
Right.
By making the exact same dietary choices every single morning, whether that's the oatmeal or the smoothie, these individuals are actively preserving their daily allowance of decision-making capacity.
Because making choices takes energy.
A lot of energy. The prefrontal cortex, which is the region of the brain responsible for complex decisions, is heavily energy dependent.
So by automating breakfast, they are essentially hoarding their cognitive fuel for the actual demands of the workday. They are bypassing decision fatigue before it's even 8 a.m.
Precisely. And the specific vocabulary used in the source of the term light breakfast addresses the actual physiological cost of digestion.
Right, because a big meal makes you sleepy.
Yeah, a heavy, complex meal diverts substantial blood flow away from the brain and down toward the digestive tract, which induces lethargy.
So the word light reflects a very calculated effort to gain immediate caloric energy without sacrificing cognitive sharpness. And that concept of hoarding cognitive capacity extends perfectly to how they handle their upcoming agenda. Because before diving into their actual work or classes, both speakers prioritize checking emails and writing out a to-do list.
Which is another term the vocabulary expert spends time dissecting.
Right. But a to-do list isn't just about being organized, is it? It serves a critical neurological function.
It does. There's this psychological principle known as the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah, it basically dictates that human brains naturally fixate on uncompleted tasks. We constantly keep them active in our working memory.
Which just sounds exhausting.
It is. It creates this low-grade, continuous hum of anxiety because the brain is absolutely terrified it will forget an important obligation.
Oh, wow. So by writing those tasks down, by externalizing them onto a physical piece of paper or like a digital note, you are basically providing your nervous system with a receipt.
A receipt? I love that.
Yeah, you're signaling to your brain that the information is safely captured elsewhere, so it physically lowers your cortisol levels.
Exactly. The to-do list isn't just a piece of paper. It functions as an external hard drive for your daily anxiety.
That's so true. And the vocabulary really underscores all this preparation. Words like hydrate, stretch, and to-do list.
They demonstrate that these mornings are not about simply waking up and reacting to whatever the world throws at you.
Right. They are highly calculated, deliberate steps. It ensures the individual feels alert, organized, and armed for the agenda before the environment even has a chance to make demands of them.
But of course, that intense front-loading in the morning, the biological hydration, the automation of breakfast, externalizing the mental load, it creates a highly organized launchpad, but there is an inevitable biological cost to all that sustained focus.
Right. By the time we hit the afternoon, that cognitive fuel you hoarded earlier in the day really begins to burn off.
And the transcript anticipates this consequence perfectly. The afternoon is framed as the period of heaviest execution.
Like long study sessions, back-to-back meetings, intense project work.
Exactly. And the speakers explicitly discuss the challenge of what they call the mid-afternoon energy slump.
Oh man, it is a universal human experience. It usually hits between, 2:0 and 3 p.m.?
Yep, right around then.
Our circadian rhythm naturally dips, and it actually causes a slight drop in core body temperature. I swear, it feels like your blood has just turned to molasses.
It really does. And it's important to note, it isn't a failure of willpower. It is just a biological reality.
And the source's vocabulary expert highlights the word sluggish to describe this exact state.
Yes. And to counteract it, the speakers are going to return to their morning strategy, emphasizing a light lunch.
Like a quinoa salad or a turkey sandwich they mentioned?
Right. Because again, the goal is to ingest fuel without triggering a massive insulin spike or demanding immense digestive energy, which would honestly only deepen the slump.
Which brings us to this really fascinating linguistic shift in the transcript.
Oh yeah, the tone change.
Yeah, because during the morning, the language was largely neutral and very mechanical, right? Hydrate, stretch, organize. But when they discuss overcoming this afternoon slump, they suddenly use the phrase knock out key projects.
They talk about tackling larger assignments.
Which is such a prevalent colloquialism in corporate and academic American English.
Very common, yeah.
But I want to propose a hypothesis regarding this shift. If the morning is entirely about calm, controlled priming, injecting this violent combative language into the afternoon just feels incredibly jarring.
It does stand out.
But maybe it operates as a psychological mechanism, like when that circadian dip hits and your natural energy plummets, framing a mundane task like clearing an inbox or finishing a spreadsheet as a physical opponent you have to knock out.
Oh, I see where you're going.
It might be a subconscious way to manufacture a quick hit of adrenaline. We might actually use aggressive language to artificially spike our arousal levels when our biology is just trying to pull us towards sleep.
That is a highly persuasive reading of the text, actually. It basically functions as linguistic caffeine.
Linguistic caffeine, yes.
By framing a project as a fight, you trigger a mild sympathetic nervous system response. You generate urgency.
Right.
However, the inherent danger there is that running on manufactured adrenaline is completely unsustainable.
Which is probably exactly why the vocabulary expert immediately balances a phrase like knockout with words like recharge and regroup.
Yes, the source illustrates this really necessary oscillation. The speakers emphasize that during this busy phase, taking short breaks to step away from the desk, maybe grab a snack, or just stretch, those are mandatory.
Right. The combative energy required to knock out a task is immediately offset by the strategic retreat of recharging.
It suggests that true productivity is not just this flat line of continuous grinding output.
No, it's a cyclical rhythm. You sprint, and then you recover. You step into the ring, and then you step out.
Exactly. You literally cannot sustain the knockout energy if you refuse to regroup. This pacing is really what separates sustainable routines from the kind of overwork that just leads straight to exhaustion.
And that cyclical rhythm dictates that after a series of these aggressive adrenaline-fueled sprints, the momentum must be intentionally halted. You cannot simply maintain that combative posture until the moment you close your eyes. And the transcript maps this critical deceleration phase perfectly in the evening routine.
Yeah, the narrative tone of the source completely transforms here. The emphasis shifts entirely from execution to decompression.
Right. The speakers mention leisurely activities, taking short walks, doing light stretching, or just listening to music after dinner.
And the dinner choices vary, right? One speaker prefers quick pasta or rice bowls, while the other opts for grilled salmon or a stir-fry.
But the absolute non-negotiable cornerstone of their evening is the post-dinner hygiene routine.
Yes. The act of washing their face and brushing their teeth is explicitly described by the speakers as a metaphor for pressing the reset button.
Which I think is just a brilliant detail, because it speaks directly to the cognitive load we accumulate over, 14 hours of consciousness.
Easily.
By 6 p.m., my brain feels exactly like a web browser with 40 different tabs open.
Oh, I know that feeling so well.
Right. You have half-finished email chains, some lingering anxiety about a meeting, a news article you skimmed but didn't finish, a random reminder to buy groceries. It is just visual and mental chaos.
The system is lagging. The cooling fan is spinning loudly because the RAM is entirely maxed out.
Exactly. The processing power is depleted and the whole system is overheating. But when you go up to the corner of that browser window and click the little X, closing every single tab simultaneously, the screen instantly clears.
The fan quiets down.
The RAM is freed up. Psychologically, that splash of cold water on the face is clicking the X.
I love that.
It is a physical boundary that communicates to your brain that the workday is officially closed. You are clearing the mental cache.
And, the physiology strongly supports that analogy. Splashing cold water on your face actually triggers a mild mammalian dive reflex.
Right, like what happens to dolphins and stuff?
Exactly like that. This physiological response actually slows your heart rate and helps shift the nervous system away from the sympathetic fight-or-flight state of the afternoon and pulls it back into a parasympathetic rest and digest state.
That is wild.
It is. And the vocabulary expert points this out by highlighting the phrases unwind and wind down.
Which, if you think about the mechanical imagery of those words, it's like a wound-up clock or a tight spring slowly releasing its tension.
Right.
The verbs themselves dictate a gradual, deliberate decrease in velocity.
We transition from the aggressive acceleration of knocking out a task to the mechanical deceleration of winding down.
And the source details exactly how this deceleration is protected, too, because the speakers explicitly avoid screens before bed.
Instead, they read books. They drink herbal tea, which the vocabulary expert specifically notes is caffeine-free to aid relaxation.
And most importantly, they adhere to incredibly strict bedtimes, usually around 10 p.m. or 10:30 p.m.
There's a very rigid boundary being enforced there.
Yeah, no endlessly scrolling through social media until 1 a.m.
No.
And the most critical insight the source reveals is the true purpose of this evening rigidity. These strict habits are not just about wrapping up the current day.
No.
The evening routine is entirely forward-looking. It is the absolute prerequisite for the morning launchpad. Protecting that 10 p.m. bedtime is actually an act of protecting tomorrow's cognitive capacity.
Ah. So a successful daily routine, therefore, isn't just a linear checklist of chores. It is a closed, continuous loop.
Yes. It requires the intentional priming and biological hydration of the morning. It requires the paced, cyclical oscillation of aggressive output and necessary recovery in the afternoon.
Wow.
And it relies entirely on the deliberate physiological reset in the evening. Each phase is totally dependent on the successful execution of the one right before it. So, as you, the listener, reflect on this deep dive, really examine your own daily loop. Where is the weakest link in your architecture?
That's a great question to ask.
Are you attempting the heavy execution of the afternoon sprint without actually having hydrated the sponge or externalized your anxiety in the morning?
Or are you trying to achieve restful sleep without actually clicking the X and closing out all the mental tabs of your workday?
Identifying which phase you neglect might fundamentally alter how you experience your daily energy.
And, the mechanics of these routines offer a really profound, comforting sense of control. The vocabulary we've analyzed today, like hydrate, regroup, wind down, it basically builds a protective linguistic architecture around our time and our attention.
It does.
But analyzing this structure actually leads me to a rather provocative question.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm.
If our entire psychological equilibrium is dependent on this strict daily rhythm, what happens to our mental state when life inevitably introduces chaos?
Oh, wow. Like when a water pipe bursts in the kitchen, or a flight is canceled, or a sudden emergency just completely upends the schedule.
Exactly. If our resilience is entirely tethered to the predictability of our routine, hydrating at exactly 6:30 a.m.
Ah,
and winding down at exactly 10 p.m., does that meticulously crafted structure actually make us less adaptable to surprise?
that is a fascinating paradox.
The question to really consider is whether the rigidity that makes us so highly productive on a normal Tuesday eventually renders us fragile when the unexpected actually occurs.
That is definitely something to leave you with. We construct these invisible scaffolds to hold our days together, and as the source demonstrates, they work brilliantly to manage our energy.
They do.
But true mastery might not just be the ability to execute the routine flawlessly. It might be the ability to maintain your psychological balance when the scaffolding is suddenly kicked away.
Beautifully said.
Definitely something to consider as you examine the architecture of your own habits this week. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.